Well, welcome everyone to another episode of the Hector Mike Experience, Common Sense in an Uncommon World. And Mike, there is a new piece of legislation that has got introduced over in California that deals with voter identification. There is, and I know you've been following this. There's a city in Southern
Huntington
California,
Beach.
Huntington Beach, that is looking to institute voter identification. And now the state, you've got a couple of members who are now looking to put forth state legislation to undo what Huntington Beach is trying to do. And so in the state, it would basically say it would bar any city um, from requiring identification, preventing people from or places from having to show identification in order to vote. And so I know, like I said, I know you've been following this.
It's an interesting quandary because Huntington Beach is actually a charter city, so it has it has the capability of having their local officials put this on the ballot, which will go to the people on March 5th in Huntington Beach. And amongst other things, it says I think it's called Measure A, and it says that people voting in Huntington Beach would be required to show a valid government ID. It also says that ballot drop boxes need to be monitored. They can't be left unattended. And you got the Secretary of State, and you've got the Attorney General of California, who have said they're going to challenge this if it passes, even though it might be the will of the people in Huntington Beach to do that. They're going to challenge them, because the state knows best. And the mayor of Huntington Beach put it very well, which is, if this is something that's going to increase people's confidence, increase their belief in the system, then what's wrong with it? And of course, the mantra that the opponents of this put forward is, well, minorities, they don't have IDs. And it's like, well, could you could you be any more patronizing, for Pete's sake? So because you're black or Hispanic or Asian, you don't have an ID. I mean, it's phenomenal that they actually would voice that opinion when you think of all of the things in your daily life that you need an ID for. I mean, if you if well, besides driving a car, to board an airplane, to adopt a pet. Hello, I mean, it's something I'm kind of familiar with. You want to rent a hotel room, you want to buy a cell phone, you want to apply for an apartment, apply for food stamps or welfare, or even voting in a union election, you have to show an ID. Um,
But Mike, here's the crazy.
Ironically enough, you even got to show an ID if you go to jail, but maybe that's why they don't do it in California. So it's like, there's no common sense to this, and that's why I think something in the vicinity of 81% of the people in this country support some form of voter ID to be able to vote, so that there is certainty that the person who is there voting is that person.
Well, here's
And
the thing is, Mike,
yeah.
in Mexico, you are
Hmm.
given you have a voter ID in order to
Hmm.
vote.
Hmm.
And to say that minorities, I mean, you know, we are either the fifth or the fourth largest economy in the world. How do folks not have identification? Because in California, not only if you're undocumented, you can go get a driver's license. You're
Hmm.
provided with it. If
Hmm.
you're undocumented, you can go fill out some forms and or have someone help you with the forms, and you can get health care paid
Right.
for by taxpayer money.
Right.
If you are also undocumented, you can apply and get in-state tuition. Also, if you're undocumented, you have all these access, and we're seeing, like, in some places where they're even trying to let them vote. In some municipal
Right.
elections, or for educate school board elections, and
Hmm.
so you're you're given this opportunity to get an ID anywhere. I mean, like, and we've talked about, like we just said, including if you have no papers, you can go get a driver's license in
Right.
California. And this is just, I mean, just to say that folks are either, I mean, because really the message is saying that there's some people who are just too dumb or too ignorant, and they tend to put it into blacks and browns, that can't afford to go out and get an identification.
A lot of
I
dumb
mean,
white people I know too, by the way, just for the record. I mean, it's I just find it
that's
interesting
absurd.
that they do that. They insult people like that. And by the way, that you mentioned Mexico as an example. Mexico's had not only photo ID to vote since 1990. I mean, that is so, they've had it for what, 30 years?
Yeah,
And they also, besides a photo ID, it's also a hologram to make sure they can't be tampered with. 38 of the 39 European countries. The only one that doesn't have it is England for local elections in London. So it's not, and that's why 81% of the people support the idea because, that's a number that cuts across all party lines. And the idea that the state has to come in and protect poor people, who are going to be victimized somehow because they're not able to vote because they don't have some form of identification. Again, when you look at all of the number of things that requires you having some form of identification for your everyday life, it just makes they got to come up with a better answer than that. They really do. And I hope, honestly, I hope the people in Huntington Beach stand up for themselves. And if they want this, they vote it in. And then, see where the state goes. And, the state will probably sue them for doing that, for the people, expressing their opinion and their voice. But so be it. It's a good way to help. It's a common sense way that cuts across lines, cuts across demographics, cuts across geography, political parties, to make sure that your election is safe, transparent, and they're coming in to get you now.
right,
but it's the kind of it's basically a common sense thing that people already have. In many places, the state will provide it for you if you don't
right.
have something
Yeah,
at no charge to you. So there's no hurdle that you have to do to
right.
get this identification. All of that is a fake narrative. Um,
But I mean,
People.
who benefits from not having this? I mean, because there's got to be a. I mean, the message of
People who
saying,
want to cheat.
well, I mean, because the message, yeah, because the message of saying that because you're minority, you happen to be too dumb to be able to go get an identification. When we use it for everything else, when we
Right.
have identification for everything, there's a reason why they don't want it. And I think you put it up there.
They
It
want,
just
yeah, people that, in other words, they want to have someone go in to represent someone else, or they send someone in, in one place as opposed to another place because you don't have precinct voting anymore. It's a huge hole in the system. There's many other things you can do to make elections more secure. This is a basic one that you start with. A lot of states have put in some form of voter ID. Many states have put in photo ID, so that you have to have your picture on the thing. Some of the states are moving in the right direction, but California, they just, it's this mentality, or I do. I mean, I will say this bluntly. I mean, here I think it's the fact that you had, I forgot how many millions of votes, or ballots, I should say, in the recall election from 2021, of Gavin Newsom that failed. How many ballots were sent out that were then returned back to the clerk's office? And the ones, you take those added to the ones that actually voted, I think it was like 10 million ballots that were out there unaccounted for. And so once you have something like that, an opening like that, not having or requiring someone to show their identification, is just opening the door even further.
yeah,
And that's why I think it's the kind of thing that most people, when they hear the concept, not the concept, but the reality of it, you show an ID to vote. And if you're going to vote by mail, a lot of states, what they do now is in order to make sure it's you that's voting and no one is ballot harvesting, there's a security envelope you put your ballot in, and on there you put either the last four of your social or your driver's license number or some other form of identification. And that way you're able to vote by absentee, but there's some form of verification, voter ID verification. common sense says that's what you do for all of the things. If you want to go give blood, you got to have an ID. I mean, the kinds of things that you have to do every day with an ID, you can't get on a plane. It's just one of those things that to say to someone, we shouldn't have it because it prevents people from voting is just plain BS. It really
Yeah,
is.
and the thing is, it's by having this voter identification, I think you put more trust into the system itself. There's been a lot of questions over the last several years, last couple election cycles we've been involved in, where there's questions as to whether or not my vote really counts or not. How many other, how many this whole ballot harvesting, situation where other people get to collect ballots. Are they switching them around? There's been questions about, the voting machines. This just adds a level of accountability, transparency, and really a bit of integrity into our voting system where, you're not giving people the opportunity to question it. But yet, I really do question that motivation behind individuals. And, obviously they're not going to say, well, we don't want voter identification because we want to continue cheating. And so trying to say that minorities or people of color
Minority.
are too dumb to be able to get identification. I mean, that's just, I, it's lack of
It's
better word,
insulting.
yeah, it is insulting. It's, and it's horrible, but, you know,
I find it the most bizarre argument that's out there about it. Um, you hit it right on the button. You want to get people to have more confidence in the election system. The way you do that is number one, as a voter, you want to know that your vote, and forget candidates, forget Donald Trump, forget Hillary Clinton. Voter integrity is about your vote being equal to my vote, so that your vote is no better or stronger than my vote is, and vice versa. And when you don't have some kind of identification requirement, you can't have people go in and say who they are, and no one knows if they are or not, and they go vote, and you it leaves the system open for gaming, and it also leaves people open to question, well, is my vote really counting the same way if someone who is not who they say they are gets to vote? That's the crux of it, and that's why I think you do see so many people that are supportive of the concept, but you don't see in some of these states the major elected officials that support that concept. So I give the people, the leadership of the elected leaders in Huntington Beach who have been elected by their citizens, kudos for taking this step. Of course, they get the threat of the state lawsuit and all this other stuff, as opposed to, encouragement and stuff like that. I mean, I guess the attorney general in a state like California has nothing better to do than go after elected officials who are doing the will of the people. Maybe you might catch some people that are robbing stores or something like that, but I guess that's not in the purview there. But I don't see any of them, by the way, having to show their ID as they walk out stealing stuff. But I give those people in Huntington Beach a lot of credit, and I hope and encourage people in Huntington Beach to go out and support this measure and support your local officials, because it's an opportunity to make a statement that this is something that you all feel is important, will bring some integrity and confidence into the election, and you have a right to say that, and you have a right to do it as well.
well, Mike, we'll make sure we keep everyone informed as these, not just what is happening in Huntington Beach, but also what's happening in state legislature. We'll keep people informed to kind of let them know where that legislation is moving through.
2 weeks, 2 weeks from today, I think is the primary, right? So, and that's where the local election will be. So
Okay.
we'll know in 2 weeks.
Okay.